Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Tonight we are going to make some battered cod, some home fries, coleslaw, and bake up some biscuits. So kind of like a little fresh fish fry night. So let's start by getting the home fries ready because we want those to start cooking up in our oven. So I'm going to cut my potatoes in half and we're going to kind of do them in like a chip type form. So kind of like fish and chips. We're going to cut them kind of not super thin, but I'm aiming for, a nice little thing. That way they'll crisp up nicely, but still have a little body to them. And we're going to get a nice coating on them. And we'll get these in the oven here. And then we will work on our biscuits. We're going to do kind of a sourdough cheddar bay biscuits. They're kind of been what my family's craving right now. Well, at least my son Torrin. He's like, oh, can you make some more biscuits of those? And it's funny because he's not a huge fan of my regular biscuits, but those biscuits he absolutely loves. And I'm like, they're like the same thing. But I guess he's a savory type of guy. There we go. We got one potato down, 2 to go. And our fish tonight, we're going to be doing cod. I feel like cod goes really well. We're going to do a battered versus a breaded fish, which is a little bit different than I normally do, but I feel like a battered fish goes much better with cod. It's a nice chunky flaky fish. There we go. And we'll make a nice little seasoned up batter with it. I've got a little bit of buttermilk, so that will help give it a nice pop as well. And I might have to clear some of these into my bowl so I have a little bit more room. I always say when you chop a potato and once you get them sliced up, they make up so much more room. There we go. And even with my giant cutting board, I still need more room. And then let's get our last one. We'll cut it in half. And this is like an easy way to kind of cut up your potatoes where you don't have to really peel them because you just have one little small piece of skin on each slice. It kind of minimizes having any full potato skin pieces, especially if you've got kiddos who aren't as big of a fan of the skins. Okay. Let's get these guys in a little batter. Okay, let me pull up my sleeves. We're going to add in some olive oil. Since we've got 3 kind of big potatoes here, we're going to put in probably around like 3 tablespoons. You want to really kind of coat them so they crisp up nicely. Otherwise, they can be soft in there. So we've got our oil in. Let me grab my flour. This is going to give it a nice little coating. So we're going to add in about 3 tablespoons of flour. 1, 2, 3. And this is going to really help the seasoning stick to it. Kind of gives you that battered fry taste to it. We're going to add in some black pepper. A couple good shakes. About a half a teaspoon. And then we're going to do some Old Bay seasoning for our fries just to give it a kind of a nice flow with the fish. Let me take my other side. We want about a teaspoon and a half of this. And there we go. And then we're going to go in and we're going to give this a nice mix and kind of really coat all of our potato pieces with our seasoned mixture. And what will happen is that oil will mix with the flour and it will really stick onto those potatoes. And then it will really crisp up nicely in the oven. Okay. There we go. I'm going to grab my really big baking sheet here. This is a 1.5 sheet pan. It's pretty large. I love it because it takes up the whole space of my oven and it allows me to do things in one big sheet versus 2, especially with like your fries like this. You want them not to be on top of each other as little as possible. You want them to have as much surface on the pan so they crisp up. Because I will say the top part gets crispy, but the bottom part gets even crispier. So it's really important to try to get them all spread out with as minimal touching as possible. If you don't have one of these, you could do it over 2 sheets as well, but just try not to have them stacked on top of each other. Otherwise, they won't crisp up as nicely. But these will be so delicious. Kind of feels well. We had kind of a big rainstorm in the middle of the day. Apparently, it rained like 2 inches or something like that. At least somebody posted that their weather or water gauge said that. Here we go. So we've got these almost pretty much spread out. Trying to use up. We have a little coverage, but that's okay. Here we go. So I'm going to wash my hands, and then we're going to pop these in the oven. I have my oven preheated to 400 because that's what we're going to cook our biscuits at. Okay. So we're going to pop our kind of our battered fries into the oven. Then we're going to work on our cheddar, kind of our sourdough cheddar baked biscuits. And then we'll make the batter for our cod, and then a lovely coleslaw and a homemade tartar sauce. So let's get this. I'm going to put it on the top rack and let it start crisping up. When we put our biscuits in, we'll move it down. And there. So let's now start on our biscuits. My sourdough, I fed it earlier after we used it. And I literally just brought it over here. And look, it has exploded. It was trapped in there. You could see how much it bubbled up. Just in the summer when it's so much warmer, it bubbles up so much faster. So my jar will need a good cleaning. But it's funny how you just poke it and it just kind of drops down and decreases in size. But that's just that natural fermentation process that really allows it to bubble up nicely. Let me grab a measuring cup here. We need a 1/2 cup of our sourdough discard. We're going to start with our wet ingredients because these are a drop biscuit versus a cutout biscuit. So a 1/2 cup of our discard. We're going to add it into our bowl. Scrape out any of that good stuff. And then this guy is going to need a big cleaning later. Okay. Kind of clean. Let me grab this off the counter. I will say starter turns, it's like the liquid cement of food. It like goes like so hard, so fast, and it's hard to clean up. Okay, we've got our 1/2 cup of our discard. We are going to add in a 1/2 cup of melted butter, or 8 tablespoons. Give it a good shake here. And then we're going to add in 3/4 cup of milk. We're going to be using milk also in our batter today for our fish. So 3/4 cup of milk. And then we're going to give this a good mix. Kind of make sure that sourdough discard gets kind of diluted into all of our little ingredients here. So I'm going to give it a little stir with my dough whisk.
Question, is that buttermilk?
Oh, no, that is just regular. That's 2% milk. We will be using some buttermilk in our batter, but I only have a little bit left. But buttermilk would be great in these biscuits as well. And you could use equal parts, like 3/4 of a cup of it. But I don't always carry buttermilk, so I'm using it for my batter because I think it will give a nice little pop on it. Okay, let's add in our baking soda and our baking powder. Get my measuring cup, and let me grab my salt while we're over here. Okay. We're going to use a teaspoon of baking powder or baking soda. I've got my teaspoon of baking soda and then a teaspoon of baking powder. So 1 and 1 of each. And then a teaspoon of garlic salt. That's more like a heaping teaspoon. Give it a nice flavor. We will be making a little garlic butter to drizzle over the top of it. So we'll add more flavor in that way. But you want a little to start with. Let's give this a nice little mix. And that way when we're ready to add our flour in, we don't have to worry about the baking powder and baking soda getting mixed around. I always like to mix it in the liquid. That way it starts to disperse quicker. Okay. Let's add in our flour over here. I'm used to having it behind me. Okay. We are going to add in 2 cups of all-purpose flour. You don't want to use bread flour on this because you want it to have a nice crumb to it. And so you don't need that extra gluten. So 1 and 2. And then we're going to mix it up, but we don't want to over mix it because we want a nice fluffy biscuit. So we're just going to barely mix it up, and then we're going to add in our cheddar cheese. So I'm just going to use my dough whisk here to mix it up until it's into a kind of a little bit of a nice shag. And so just be careful not to over mix because that will give you a harder, stiffer biscuit, and we don't want that. Okay. So now it's still a little bit of a dry shag. We're going to add in 1 cup of cheddar cheese, which is really like 2 big handfuls. And since we only had a teeny bit left, we're just going to use it all up. Extra cheese will just make them a little delicious. And now I'm going to use my whisk. We're going to mix it up until that cheddar cheese is combined. There we go. But again, just minimize the amount of mixing. If you don't have a dough whisk at home, just use a regular spatula. Don't use a hand mixer because over mixing will ruin it, and it is so easy to over mix with a hand mixer. So just use a regular spoon. Let me grab my baking sheet. You want a parchment paper lined baking sheet for this. It will just help them come up nicer.
I do have a question. Someone said they have the Mexican style cheese from Costco. Would that work in these biscuits?
Oh yeah, that would work well. It won't be as strong of a cheddar taste. Let me see if I can speak here. But that should work as well. It'll be a bit more mild because I think that's like Monterey Jack and Kobe Jack cheeses in that. But it would still go well. It wouldn't ruin the biscuit. It would just be a slightly different cheese. You could put shredded Gouda in here. That would be delicious. Now I'm going to take my biscuits here. And I'm not really pushing hard. I'm really gently kind of holding them together into a ball or like molding them. So very lightly. You don't want to push them too hard because again, you want them to be light and fluffy. And so just a really light, gentle guiding into a ball shape. And we're doing some big biscuits. I might always steal some towards the end. I try to get them as even as possible, but I always end up having like 1 or 2 biscuits that are so much bigger than the rest of them. And then it's always like comical, like, how did that happen? There we go. But I like having a great big biscuit because it gives you more of that really soft inside versus like all the crunch on the outside. So it gives you a big surface area top, but then you have so much of that nice flaky middle. Okay. We've got our biscuits right here. I'm going to spread them out. I'm going to put my smaller one in the middle because that gets the least amount of heat out of everything. Okay. Let me give my hands a quick rinse, and we're going to pop these in the oven. And then we're going to get on with the rest of dinner. Luckily, fish is typically a pretty quick dinner. So these are going to go in the oven for 18 minutes at 400. So I'm going to just move my home fries down underneath. But I always like to start them at top so they get a nice good crisp on them as well.
You have a question? If you had your pick, would you pick gas cooking?
You know what? For the longest time, I wanted a gas stove in my kitchen. And when we remodeled our kitchen 2 years ago, I was like, oh, do it. But it was going to be an astronomical amount to do it. My parents have gas, and it's like the dream. It's like, it's so amazing. It looks so great. I find that electric actually cooks more evenly. And because I'm so used to it, now I get frustrated when I get to a gas thing because my actual times that I use in my head don't work on a gas stove. It's slightly different. That's why I always say, figure out what your oven is, and then once you know it, then you'll do great on it. But I prefer electric, and that could be because I've just been doing electric for so long that I love it. I do love the looks of gas stoves. I mean, I think that's the romanticized version that, oh, I'm going to have that beautiful Viking range or some of those crazy ones out there. But honestly, I really like my electric. It cooks evenly every single time. It's not a guess. Okay, let's start on our batter. Actually, let's start on we can make our batter and then we'll start on our coleslaw. So for our batter here, I'm gonna get my milk. Got to get some baking powder. Got to bring all of my stuff back over here. And we're gonna do some flour. So I have like 7 big pieces of cod. So I'm gonna make probably like 4 cups of batter because you don't want to run out of it. That's the worst, is whenever I've done breading or something and I run out and I'm like, ugh, I don't have enough of this. So let's start with 2 cups of flour, and then we'll do 2 cups of milk. So 1 and 2. That should be all we need for this. And then we're going to add in a teaspoon of baking powder. This is going to help it give a little bit of a pop when you fry it up, which kind of gives you that beer battered texture. So we're going to add on a whole teaspoon of flour. And then we're going to season this up. We're going to use some Old Bay. If I can open it. There we go. We're going to put in about, I want to say, a teaspoon or so. And then a little bit of pepper, just to add a little bit more kick to it. But we're going to have kind of a mild coating on it. And then let me grab a little whisk here. 1 more over. We're going to whisk this together. There we go. And then we're going to I'm going to add in the rest of my buttermilk, which isn't too much. And then we'll do regular milk. So I need about 2 cups. It's about equal parts flour and water to make this batter. So just a smidge here. And I'm actually do a little squirt of lemon juice in my milk to kind of recreate the acidic part of buttermilk. So let's bring it right up to the top. This is a 2-cup measuring cup. And let me grab, I've got a fresh lemon here. We're going to use some of this lemon in our tartar sauce as well. Pick out, I don't want any seeds in my batter. So let me grab that out. And we're just going to do a nice squeeze in here. It's not going to give you a true buttermilk, but it adds a little bit of acidity to it, which will then react with the baking powder in there to give you more of a bubble on your fish. So I'm going to let it sit there for just a second, and we'll whisk it together at right before we do it. But let's prep our coleslaw and our homemade tartar sauce first. Okay, we're not going to use quite all of this cabbage for our coleslaw. We've got like a mixed boat in the house. Some love coleslaw, some do not. So I will say a head of cabbage can last us a bit more. But I always make my kids take some and try it every single time. You know, they say you have to try a food 7 times before you can truly have an opinion on whether you like it or not. And I always tell my kids that, and they're like, still don't like it every time I say that. And I was like, but you might. Next time you might. I mean, I remember as a kid, there were so many things that I didn't like, and now I love. especially as you get older, more and more of your taste buds die off. So flavors that were really strong when you were a kid and you didn't like are more mellow as an adult. And so you tend to like them more. Like hated mustard as a kid. I like mustard now. Okay, we've got our cabbage in here. And then we're going to peel up some carrots. I'll grab my peeler here. We're just going to do ribbons in it. Sometimes I grate it, but today didn't feel like getting the grater out. So, not that it was any extra work. I just didn't feel like reaching up for it. So the peeler it is, but I love carrot ribbons. I think they're so nice. It's just a slightly different texture than grated carrots. But I think they're a little bit more fun. I always tell Teddy, because he's obsessed with like worms and bugs. I'm like, oh, those are carrot worms. And then he'll like eat it like a worm. And I think it's just funny. Okay. Let's get our ribbons. I'm going to just make a bunch of them, and then we'll do a couple little slices on them so they're not super long. That way they kind of mesh well into our coleslaw. By the way, if you don't have a grater at home, but you have a peeler, this is just a great way where you can add carrots into it. I find that the store-bought carrots that are already pre-shredded, they're really tough, and they dry out really easily. So I like to always do mine at home because it keeps them nice and fresh and tender. And they don't dry out. Like a lot of times you can see the carrots, the shredded ones that are like starting to look white. That's just because they've lost a lot of their moisture. But when you just do it right here, they're nice and fresh. So a bit more tender, a bit more flavor. Okay. Let's just do a couple little chops over here. And we don't have to chop it up too thin, just enough where we don't have any super long ones. We're going to add this to our coleslaw. There we go. And then we're going to make a really simple coleslaw base. Let me grab two bowls here. We'll grab those up here because I need one for coleslaw and one for the tartar sauce, because you can't have battered fish without tartar sauce. Just love it. Okay. So for the coleslaw, really simple. We're just going to use a little bit of mayo and then apple cider vinegar and a teensy bit of sugar. I prefer a more savory coleslaw versus a super sweet one, so I do not add as much sugar as a lot of people do. Since we don't have a huge amount of coleslaw, I'm going to just do about a 1/3 cup of mayo. We're just going to do about a capful of apple cider vinegar. So this is about a teaspoon. And then we're going to do just about a 1/2 tablespoon of sugar. And I do think you definitely need the sugar in the mayo or for the coleslaw, but you don't need a lot. Then we're going to do a couple sprinkles of garlic salt. Not even a 1/2 teaspoon, like a 1/4 of a teaspoon, just to get a little bit of a garlicky flavor to it. And then we're going to add in a little bit of black pepper. Again, like a 1/4 of a teaspoon. Not much. And you don't need to add a lot of salt to mayo. It's already salty to begin with. And we're going to mix this up. And then we're going to pour this over our coleslaw and mix it in. And then we're going to start battering up our fish before we make our tartar sauce, since we're getting down to the final bits. Okay. And you just mix that all in here. You want to mix it in a bowl first. You can't just throw all the ingredients in your coleslaw, because you've got to make sure that vinegar gets mixed and the sugar into the mayo. Otherwise, it just won't mix in as well. So we're going to give this a nice mix up. So just a super easy, simple coleslaw, but it's delicious. And I will say coleslaw is one of those things that it's also really great the next day when it can marinate in the dressing. Okay. let's whip our, let me move this to the side. I'll grab it back in a second, but I want to have some space to do this part. We're going to whisk in our milk into here, but let's start getting our oil heated up for our fish because we want it nice and hot. We don't need to have it a whole, like completely submerged. What I like to do is I just like to have a nice coating on the bottom of my pan. It doesn't have, your fish doesn't have to be completely submerged, just, you know, the bottom third. So don't waste all of that oil doing it. And so just do it a little bit. I'm not one, I don't keep my oil. I know a lot of people like to keep their oil, but I am not one to do it. I just don't like it. It's a lot of work to put it in a container and move it around and whatnot. So I always throw mine out between uses. So I always try to minimize the amount of oil that I'm using when frying stuff. Okay, this is going to be our batter. And remember, we had flour and baking powder and some pepper and Old Bay seasoning in here. And then we mixed it with milk, some buttermilk, and a squeeze of a lemon. And I'm just going to whisk it together until you don't want any big clumps. And then we'll dip each piece of our fish in at a time and then put it into the oil when it's hot. But you don't want to dip it before. This is one where you dip as you go. Okay, so this will be nice and ready for the dipping process. Let's start making our coleslaw, our tartar sauce. I love tartar sauce. So let's start getting that up. We are going to need, where's my mayo here? Let me grab another spoon. We're going to need a big heaping scoop of mayo. We've got to have enough for everyone. And for coleslaw, or not coleslaw, tartar sauce, mayo is your base. And sometimes I've done it with half mayo, half sour cream, but I truly love it with just the full mayo. And get the real mayo. Don't get fat-free mayo. It's terrible. And it doesn't have the right fat content to make up the sauce as well. And it's so chemically. So get the full fat. It just tastes so much better. Okay. So we've got about a half a cup of mayo in here. And we're going to mince up a little bit of red onion. We don't need a whole lot, but this is going to add a little crunch along with some pickles that we're going to be adding into it. So I'm going to just take off this whole outer layer here. And then we're going to do a nice kind of fine mince on it because you want it to be, you want the chunks in there, but you don't want it to be super big. More smaller, but nice crunch in there. So we're going to do a kind of a small, really small mince on these. So I'm making a lot of thin slices, and then we'll go over it. And we'll add this into our mayo. And then we're going to dice up some pickles, some nice dill pickles, and we'll put them in there. And we're going to put in some dill as well and some lemon juice. Okay, so we've got these nice kind of minced up red onions, and you want to use red onions for this. You don't want to use a yellow onion. If you don't have red onions, you could use a white onion over a yellow onion because it's got a bit more peak, or a green onion. But red onions are the mild. They're not as astringent flavor. They work really well in this. Okay, let's grab some pickles here. Here we go. I'm going to leave this jar out because Evie loves pickles and she'll be so excited because I'm always like limiting her. She would eat a whole jar of pickles in one setting if you let her. But I'm like, you're going to get like sodium poisoning if you do that. But she absolutely loved pickles. I always say Evie's my one that loves like extreme flavors. She's going to eat the rest of my lemon that I don't use either. She just eats it raw. She loves it. She loves wasabi, almonds, just lots of extreme flavors. There we go. So we're going to just kind of chop these up. And this is going to add a really great flavor to it. I prefer like a salty, dill pickle versus sweet pickles. Sweet pickles will give you a sweeter, like tartar sauce. It's the same thing. I'm using mayo versus Miracle Whip. Miracle Whip's a lot sweeter, so it would give you a sweeter base. We're going to add in our diced up pickles. There we go. Let me check our oil, see how hot it is. Just going to do a little drip test. Okay, looks like we've got a nice thing, so I'm going to turn it down just a little bit. And let's start breading our cod because we're going to start dipping them in. Let me grab a fork. This is going to be the best way to do it without getting my fingers completely battered. So I'm just going to take my cod. We're going to just submerge it into our batter here. Make sure it's fully coated because this is what is going to fry up nice and crispy. Get a little bit more right there. And then I'm going to put it off in here and we're going to let it fry up. Make sure you want your oil to sizzle with the water in it, but then turn it down because you don't want it too hot because you want a nice golden fish that's cooked all the way through versus a fish that has, burnt on the outside and not done in the middle. So we're going to get our next one in. And let me grab, we can do about these three big ones first, and I'm hoping the next 4 will fit in the next round.
You have a question? Can you go over what's in the batter?
Yes. So the batter is 2 cups of all-purpose flour. Then we added in about a teaspoon of Old Bay seasoning, about a half a teaspoon of black pepper, and a teaspoon of baking powder. And then we added in a mixture of buttermilk. I had about a 1/4 cup of buttermilk and then 1 3/4 cups of milk with a squeeze of lemon over it. Let it sit, mix it together. And so it's kind of got like a buttermilk batter to it. And then we'll let it fry up and crisp up here. Let me grab, kind of splashed a little oil. We're going to let that fry up. Once we start to see the golden colors, then we'll flip them over. Okay. Let me grab a pan out so that when we're ready to take them off, I'm going to lay them on paper towels so they soak up the extra grease and keep them nice and crispy. Don't ever just put them on a flat surface. Either put them on like an oven rack, like a drying rack for like a cookie resting rack, or paper towels so that they get the nice kind of crunch on them. Turn it down to about a 5 now. And okay, now we are going to finish up our tartar sauce to dip our fish in because you've got to have tartar sauce in here. And then we should have let me check to see how much time we have on here. Oh, did I forget to set the timer? I did. Let's go grab them out. Apparently they're good, so let's go. Apparently I forgot to set the timer on it. I was like, wait a second, it's been about 18 minutes, but they're perfect. No worries. That's why I always say set the timer, but they're golden brown and perfect. Good thinking. I was like, gosh, it seems like it's been a little long, but look, perfect. We're going to put our oven fries are going to crisp up in there. Just a second. Let me grab a trivet for this. At least I didn't turn the oven off like I did last time when I made muffins. Okay, so we've got our lovely Cheddar Bay biscuits here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to melt some butter in here with some garlic salt. And we're going to brush that over the tops of them to give them just a little bit of flavor. We're only going to use about 3 tablespoons. You don't need all that much. And then once that's melted, I'll brush it over with a little bit of garlic salt. These are starting to get nice and golden. So let's see if we can do our flip here. Right there. But I always can tell by the edges when they're kind of getting golden that it's ready to flip. Sorry, got a little cough there. These two stuck together. I have to break them apart before I can flip it. Apparently I didn't break it all apart. Doing a little surgery. There we go. And this is going to give you this nice crispy batter on it. That kind, you know, that beer batter-esque type, the really truly fish and chip ones. Delicious. And it'll be perfect for dipping into our tartar sauce. Okay, let's finish up. We've got our minced up onions, our diced up pickles, and we have our mayo. Now we are going to add a little bit of pepper. Just a little bit, a pinch. Not even a fourth of a teaspoon, but a little kick. We're going to add in some dried dill.
You got a question? Did you add the spatula to your Amazon page?
I did. I don't have this fish one in there because I don't. This one is a part of a set that I got from Target, but I did add my other ones in there. I'm looking for, I was going to say I need to get a new set because mine are kind of wearing down. I'm trying to find one. I always like to look in the store and see it, but when I find it, I will definitely add it in there. I have my other OXO ones that I use all the time in there, and I absolutely love those. We're going to add in a pinch of garlic salt. So we added in about a half a teaspoon of dried dill. If you're using fresh dill, you're going to want to use about a teaspoon. And we're going to add a pinch of garlic salt. Again, mayo is already salty, so you don't need to add that much. And then we're going to add in some fresh lemon juice. So I'm just going to squeeze the lemon over it. This is half a lemon. We used the other half in our batter, which is giving, you can see we've got this lovely little bubbly edges on our fish here. And that's from the buttermilk or the lemon and milk interacting with the baking powder. So it's giving you that really light and crispy, almost tempura style batter. And here is our lovely homemade tartar sauce, which is way better than any store-bought tartar sauce. I said I don't like store-bought tartar sauce, but homemade, so good. Okay, let's get a little bit of garlic salt in here, just about a half a teaspoon. I'm going to turn my butter off, let it sit here. Let me check on our fish. Not quite. I'm looking for a golden brown. So this one needs a little bit longer and a little bit one, but this one is almost. We're going to do a rotate. There we go. Okay. Let me go grab some dried parsley to throw in there. Where are you? Right here. That's going to give you a nice herby look on it. You know, when you go to the Red Lobster and they have some like the herby spread on it, these taste just like Red Lobsters, homemade. My husband actually said he likes them better than Red Lobsters, which is big praise because I think Red Lobster's biscuits are amazing. We're gonna brush it over. This is our melted butter, garlic, salt, and a little bit of parsley to kind of give you that nice herby butter topping to it. These are looking fantastic.
I have a question. How's the garden doing outside?
It is doing great. We've been getting so much rain here recently in Tennessee, so that's been helping keep it alive. I've been harvesting fresh herbs with it almost every single day. So it's going well. And a couple of my tomato plants have a little tomato growing on them. So I'm hoping we'll get some before we go on our trip in a couple weeks, but I don't know. I think that's a lofty wish. Okay, let's see. I think these are ready now. Look at this, nice golden. I always gonna put it the grease side down so that it crisps up. There we go. So we got our first round of our beard batter cod. Let's grab our next one. So we're going to take our fork, we're going to dip each one in and really cover it. Not our beer. I don't know why I said beer. It's like a beer batter without that. My kids don't actually like beer batter cod because they don't like the taste of beer in it. But adding the baking powder to this gives you that reaction.
The Disco Dancing Cat just sent you a bunch.
Oh, well, thank you, Disco Dancing Cat. I'll have to do a.
Please don't. You have a question? Where are we going on the trip?
We've got a big it's our big annual camping trip. So we're going to do the Indiana Dunes National Park. And then we are going to, it's like Ottawa National Forest and Nicolette something else. It's like a French name, National Forest. Those are in Wisconsin. And then we're going all the way up to the tip of Minnesota to Voyageurs National Park. So we're doing about a 9-day camping trip. And then we're going to go to my sister's lake house in Minnesota for about a week. So we've got a nice, fun kind of 2-week plus trip for it. We love doing our camping trips. Last year, we did the Black Hills and the Badlands, and that was so much fun. I'm going to slide this over so I can get that last one in.
And they get to see you camp cook.
Yes, we're going to stream, and I'm going to do my camp cooking there. So you guys will see me cooking over a teeny tiny camp stove as well as over an open fire. So it's a little slightly different cooking method, but you know, my kids always say last year I made these steaks and they all talk about how they were the best steaks I've ever made. And I did them over the campfire. And I have to admit, they were really, really delicious. And we got them at this random tiny grocery store in the middle of South Dakota. But they were truly like the best steaks ever. Okay. Well, I'm not sure I'll make you guys sit through frying these up. I think I'm gonna plate up and show you how. Oh, my husband reminded me we got the home fries in there. See, this is, you guys get me talking and I forget what's in my oven. I've got our home fries crisping up. I was wondering, I was like, I thought I made more than this when I was looking out there. Look at our beautiful home fries.
You gotta use that timer.
I know, I'm terrible without the timer, but these crisp up perfectly. I never use my timer on my potatoes because potatoes, you've got like a 10-minute wiggle room before you've ruined them. Not that I haven't ruined them before. I mean, I think about the poor naan I cooked up yesterday that was like 2 seconds before it went up and turned pitch black. But these are my yummy home fries. And the best thing, I'm going to get under with a spatula because I'm going to show you how they crisp up so nicely on the bottom side. That's why you kind of cut them thing. But look, we'll flip them over. And do you see how we just got this, of course there's one, but this beautiful golden crust on it? Oh, so good. So we're going to just slide these under. I find if you do it as soon as you take them out of the oven, they won't stick onto your pan quite as much. But I always do them on my baking sheet versus on parchment paper because I think that they taste better on the baking sheet. This is the one time where I'm like, baking sheet rules over parchment paper. Most of the time I'm parchment paper all the way. But this, you got to do it on there. It just gives you that nice crunch. There we go. But do you just see these nice golden crispy edges on my home fries? So good. That's why I said, remember when we were laying them out and I said, make sure they're all on that base there so that they'll crisp up nicely. Okay, let's plate up. I'm going to show you how we're going to serve up dinner tonight. Okay. Let me grab my coleslaw and my tartar sauce. Turn this down a smidge. Okay. So we're going to start with our, look, this one looks the most beautiful. Our delicious Cheddar Bay biscuit using our sourdough discard. We've got cheddar cheese in here. We made a garlic butter on it. And it's just like Red Lobster's, but so good. Then we'll be having a nice serving of our home fries where we coated them with olive oil, flour, Old Bay seasoning to really tie in with our fried fish. And then we've got our lovely battered fish using buttermilk, milk, lemon, baking powder, flour, Old Bay seasoning to give you that nice, delicious battery crunch. homemade tartar sauce with pickles, red onions in there. I would keep scooping, but I know if not everybody has my love for tartar sauce. And then last but definitely not least, we've got our homemade coleslaw with our dressing with a slightly sweet dressing, not an overly sweet one, but just perfect. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Yeah, quick question.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have help with the cleanup?
I do. My husband actually does all the dishes. So I'll pack up and put food away, but he washes all the dishes and that. And then the kids will help wipe off counters. So it's like a joint effort into it. So that's a big help here. So it's not as much work. But guys, thank you guys so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, show you what we're making for our family, and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to that link, search for the name of our video, and watch again and cook along with us again. We also have an Amazon storefront at home. So I know lots of people asked about different spatulas or the baking sheets or pans we use. I uploaded all of them, almost all of them, into our Amazon store. That link is found on our profile page as well. We do make a small commission that does help us out, but again, it's about sharing what products we use, so hopefully you guys can try them out too. But again, thank you guys so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and